Okay, welcome everybody. This is the session on top tips from peer reviewers. We're going to wait another 5 minutes, I think, before beginning. Just make yourself comfortable and welcome, by the way. So my name is Esh. I am from the KI facilitation team. I hope you all enjoyed the plenary. And our speaker today is Venkat Narayan. He is from the Rollins School of Public Health at Emory University, and he will be discussing some top tips from peer reviewers. Venkat has said already that he would like more of a conversation. Given the amount of people we have, what I would suggest is that we all type our questions directly into the chat. So not in the Q&A, but directly into the chat. And Venkat will speak for a while and then address your questions, I guess, as he goes along or right at the end, up to him. I just want to remind everyone, which was reminded in the plenary as well, that the session is being recorded, just so you're aware. And the chat from this, if you type in questions in the chat, we're also going to save this so that we can communicate that to the panelists as well. So just so you're aware, we're going to try and capture the questions here as well. And obviously, as we encourage you in the beginning, think of any questions and you'll be using the some of the KI Storm platform as well. So for now, I think we can begin the session.
Hi, thank you very much. And, good morning, good evening to all of you. I'm here in Atlanta at Emory University, and it's a pleasure, meeting all of you online. So basically what I'm going to try and do is spend about 5-6 minutes giving a little overview of the NIH peer review process, and also as, how you might increase your chances of getting funded. There is really no magic tip to it. Sometimes you can write a great proposal and you may not get a good score. Sometimes you may not have written a good proposal and you would get a good score. So those kind of chances do happen. But the goal here is to see how you can maximize your chances. So firstly, my first tip is that you really want to start early in terms of starting to prepare your grant and your grant writing. It's always important to do that so that you give yourself sufficient time to think through the details carefully, and very importantly, to write it clearly and also have it read by several colleagues. I mean, some of them from the technical perspective, and also get it read by people who do not know the topic well. If they can understand what you have written, it will really increase your chances. So basically, there are two types of grants largely. One is called an R01. Those are usually 12-page proposal and one Ames page, that's about 13 pages. And then there is the R21 and R03, and those are the smaller grants. Those are 6 pages and one Ames page. So what is common across all proposals is that they have an Ames page, which is 1 page, in which you pretty much have to write your entire proposal in a summary form. So that is the anchor that you want to pay attention to. And then after the Ames page, there are 4 sections. Section 1 is what is called significance of your study. So you want to summarize the literature and also excitingly motivate the reader to why your study is so important, why it is so urgent, and why it has got to be done now, and why you and your team are the best people to do it. I mean, that needs to come across in the significance page. You need to allocate your pages appropriately. If it's an R01, I would say don't spend more than 2 pages for your significance. If it's an R21 or R03, don't spend more than 1 page for your significance. And the next section is what is called innovation. So what is new? What is really new and exciting and wonderful about your proposal? So in general, you don't want to spend more than a page on that in an R01, and maybe even less than that, half a page in an R21 or R03. And then the substantial part of your proposal is what's called approach. And approach really is the methods that you're going to be using, the details of it. So in an R01, you probably will end up having 8 to 9 pages to do the approach. And whereas in an R21 or R03, you'll probably have about 4 pages to do it. So this is something you want to remember. The first 2 important tips initially: start early, involve colleagues, align your readers and reviewers up front, budget your pages adequately, and then start writing. So then how does all this happen? Basically, you submit your proposal. The first important thing is that it needs to be done well. If there are any errors, your proposal can get rejected. So you want to avoid all possible errors in terms of technical errors. And then what happens, the NIH then assigns a study section. A study section is really people like me and you, maybe 8 to 12 people or 14 people sometimes in a team to review the proposals. And each proposal is given to 3 reviewers, a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary. Sometimes there's only 2 reviewers, sometimes there can be 3 reviewers. It's the job of the primary, secondary, and tertiary reviewers to have hopefully read the proposal very carefully and to come up with an initial score. Okay, so then, so those scores are provided to the NIH by website ahead of the review committee meeting. So the scores are 1 to 9. 1 is excellent and 9 is terrible. And so in general, good reviewers use the entire range of scoring from 1 to 9 to convey their enthusiasm or otherwise. So you have 3 reviewers. So the study section starts with each reviewer, the primary, secondary, and tertiary, given the initial chance to state their initial score. So the reviewer 1 would say, this is my score. And then reviewer 2 would say, this is my score. And reviewer 3 would say, this is my score. So those scores are heard by the rest of the committee members. And then there is each reviewer, 1, 2, and 3, then gives a short 2 to 3 minute summary indicating what has influenced their score. And so they tend to highlight the score driving points, things that have influenced a high score or things that have influenced their low score. So it's really very much a sieve-like process. And after the review committee has listened to all 3 reviewers, then there is an open conversation which is facilitated by the chair of the review committee. And then people can have conversations. And once again, each of the reviewers are also given a chance to discuss amongst themselves, etc. When all this is over, the chair then briefly summarizes the conversation until that point, and then asks the primary, secondary, and tertiary to restate their score. So hopefully, through the discussion, they will have changed their scores. So they once again restate the scores. And at that point, all committee members are then asked to enter their score independently. And the important thing here is most review members end up scoring what's called in the range. So if the primary reviewer has given a score of 2, the secondary has given a score of 4, the tertiary has given a score of 3, the range is 2 to 4. So everybody is advised to score in the range of 2 to 4. However, if a committee member wants to score outside the range, they can do it, but they have to provide a half-page to one-page justification for why they're doing it. So clearly, so when you think about it, there are 2 levels of influence here. Level 1 is your primary, secondary, and tertiary reviewers, and level 2 is all the rest of the reviewers. So what you need to bear in mind is that the reviewers, some of them may be specialized to your area of work, some may not be. So you have to write your proposal in a way that on the one hand, it is clear to the technically savvy, knowledgeable reviewer in your field, but at the same time, somebody not working in your field should also be able to understand your proposal and apply their scientific knowledge to evaluate it. So this is very important. So you're writing not just to your group of people, but you're writing, suppose you're writing pulmonary disease, make sure it is clearly understood by somebody who's not in the field of pulmonary disease, but is studying maybe diabetes or studying infectious disease, etc. So that clarity is extremely important for you to bear in mind. So then, the other thing you need to keep in mind is that all reviewers are humans. So generally, each reviewer gets between 3 and 6 and 9 proposals to review. They can be tired. They tend to do it on a plane. They tend to do it at night, etc. So they are tired. So the easier you make it for the reader, the better your chances of success. So clarity and ease of writing. Suppose the reviewer has to search your proposal to find something he or she wants, you're going to lose impact and you're going to lose their enthusiasm for you. So how can you write your proposal well? Firstly, pay a great deal of attention to the one-page aims page, because that is the page that all the reviewers are going to read. The primary, secondary, tertiary, and also the rest of the committee hopefully will have read it. So in that one page, you clearly want to start, open your aims page very clearly. What is your project about? Why it is important? What gap in knowledge does it fill? What it does not fill? That should come across very clearly in the first few lines, and then use the rest of the page. What are the gaps? What is not known, and what gaps are you filling? And then very clearly lay out the aims of your proposal. This is the goal of my proposal. These are my aims 1, 2, and 3. So list the aims in very clear language. I keep telling my students, as an artist, when you write something and other people read it, they can all interpret it differently. But in science, when you write a sentence and you show it to 10 people, all 10 should interpret it exactly the same way. And this is why starting to write your aims page ahead of time, showing your aims page to 4 or 5 colleagues, making sure they understand what you want them to understand. I think that is very, very important. So you've written the aims page, and then conclude the aims page with what is called an impact statement. And in that, clearly indicate how this project is going to change the world. There is a very nice NIH document called The Anatomy of an Aims Page, which I will send across after this call, and it can be shared with you. So get your aims page well, and that is the heart of things. And then the rest of it, write it in a way that is exciting and logical. So there's got to be a flow in your logic. Don't bring in unnecessary things. Show as much preliminary data as you can in your approach section, so that people know you've done some work, or you have some data on which you're basing your hypothesis, etc. Make that clear, and make your approach section flow. The easiest, I often say, organize your approach section well. Start with the first paragraph. This is my team. This is the overall project. This is why our team is so good. And then say, this is the overall broad project. This is a design of the project, and these are my aims. And then go aim 1, aim 2, aim 3, go one by one, and discuss the rationale for each aim, the methods used for each aim, the analysis, the power, and then put it all together. So there are different ways of doing it, but the most important thing is to write it with clarity, write it with as much precision as possible, so that several people can read it and appraise it. And innovation is important. So you just can't say the study is being done for the first time in Africa and therefore it's an innovation. That doesn't work. What they're looking for is how your project is advancing science in the field, something exciting. You're working in an area where there's a lot of sickle cell disease, for example. Then you can excitingly say the study can't be done anywhere else except in my setting. So that's what they want to hear. Or say, all previous studies have left this gap, which I'm going to fill. So think deeply, think carefully, and importantly, write well. And I always advise, conclude your proposal with one tight paragraph, almost summarizing your proposal, saying where the next anticipated move is, and why this proposal has to be done now. And if it's not done now, why the whole world gets poorer because of it. You want to bring in a lot of excitement in the writing. And the trick is this: when somebody picks up your proposal and they read it, A, they're able to understand it, they're able to value the science, and B, and lastly, they're able to read it like an exciting novel. You're telling them a story that they can't, lay down. They want to finish. If they have to struggle with it, if your reading is difficult, and also write short sentences, clear sentences, break paragraphs, and often I say underline and bold the most important things, very important. Write some things in italics, all the things that you want them to see. If somebody is opening your 12 pages and they're able to quickly scan through it, even in the scanning over 2 minutes, they should be able to get your main message. And so make sure you've highlighted those things clearly. That's, pretty much, one way to think about it. So why don't I stop there, given you I can get into greater details in the question and answer sessions. Why don't you ask me your questions?
Are people able to type questions in the chat? Let me just check. Should not be a problem.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Where do most grant writers bomb? I think in general, a very good question. To be honest with you, if the AIMS page is not strong, you lose a lot of readers and reviewers. So the AIMS page has to be strong, number one. That's one place they bomb. The second is where things are written very generally without specifics and examples. Thirdly, when your research questions are not clearly formulated and your methods are not clearly laid out, then those are the ways in which you bomb. Please, how to approach sustainability. Very good point. So I think the way to approach sustainability is really to show that you have developed your research idea based on local needs. You have the support of the environment, your institution, your local government, etc. And that you also have letters of support showing that if this study works, then there is a strong likelihood it will get accepted. And if it's a clinical trial or a implementation research, then make sure you show the cost and cost implications of your study. Make sure you've done some qualitative research to consult with your peers, with the patients, with the providers, etc. So showing that, and again, how you write an etiological proposal and how you write an implementation research proposal are different. So, but paying attention to all of that is extremely important. Next question. You mentioned R01 and R21. Any advice on UO2? Good question. You know, UO2s and P grants are generally rare. You know, the U is what's called a cooperative agreement, where the NIH also plays a substantial role in it once after it's getting funded. These tend to be larger, more team grants. So in a U grant, you definitely want to show the institutions, the partnerships, and also how you're laying the infrastructure foundation to advance things, how, if you're funded, how you will be able to collaborate with the other U grantees in the network. All of that is important. So that's a subtle difference. R01 and R21s are individual projects led by PIs, single or multiple PIs, whereas a U1 is an institutional grant and has, you know, so you need to bring in those elements more strongly. How does the guidance apply for research training programs? Very good question. The classic research training program in global health is a D43 or a D71, which is a planning grant. In general, the training grant, they're looking at 4 things. Number one, what is the theme of your training? You know, why is the topic important? So you want to explain that very clearly. The training plan is extremely important. How are you going to select the mentees fairly, providing the process? How are you going to, you know, train them? How are you going to evaluate them? All of that is important. The mentor group is extremely important. So what is the leadership? How is it organized? Who are the mentors? You don't want too many mentors, but you don't want too few. In general, you want at least 6, 7, 8 mentors available, and a very coherent organizational plan to make sure the mentors and mentees are connected, and it's a rich experience. And in many situations, you may also want to include some, you know, train the mentor plans to improve the mentor. That is important. Showing your environment is important, and showing that you'll be able to recruit enough mentees. What's the demand? So show how many people would apply for this, how many people are available, how would you select them? Showing diversity. How do you balance gender diversity? How do you balance ethnic diversity, geographical diversity, socioeconomic diversity across the mentees? All of that is going to be important. And finally, your environment. Do you have the strength in the environment, the support of your institutions? And somebody asked the question of sustainability. What happens after this training plan? Are these people, you know, going to get employed somewhere? Are they going to have rich independent research careers themselves? Do you have within your grant maybe small pilot grants to help people write their first grants, etc., things like that? And how are you going to evaluate in terms of total publications, total grants coming out from the mentees, the quality of the experience, etc. Some grants associated with DS1 Africa may not be necessarily innovative, but rather developing important resources. I think that's a very important question. You know, this is where you have to broaden the definition of innovative. Innovative can mean science innovation. It can mean, technological innovation. It can mean innovation in methods, but it can also mean innovation in creating new infrastructure, a new way of doing it. Suppose, for example, you're creating a network of African centers, leveraging their existing resources. That is also innovation. So I think you need to think imaginatively here and think of innovation not just in terms of science innovation, but also the innovation in terms of organizational innovation. How do your ability to scale up things, your ability to create an interdisciplinary forum, those kind of things. How does previous track record score in the sections on approach innovation you described? Very important. I mean, unfortunately, previous track record does count. That's why writing your CVs well is very important. You get, it's a 4-page CV, and in the CV, they want a little bit of your background. The summary statement you write, you've got to write it specific to each grant. You know, if you're going to use the same summary statement, reviewers quickly know that you've not shown dedication. And also in the CV, clearly show your contributions so far, what your publications are. So that is important, and that's also why the CVs of your team is important. You may not have a great track record because you're a beginner, but if you pair up with good senior mentors or collaborators in Africa or in the US, that becomes important. But the most important thing is to start early. A lot of people, get bombed when they put in a CV that they have submitted before. They have not adapted it. You don't want to leave spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, or something that looks like you've adapted from somewhere else. Those are very important. How important are figures and tables? Extremely important. You don't want to include any figures and tables in the aims page. They are discouraging it. But in the approach section, you definitely want at least one figure that summarizes the concept of your proposal and includes the aim. Suppose somebody says, show me in one slide what is your entire project and what are the aims of the project. You should be able to show that. And that also helps you to think better when you conceptualize your entire project in one slide, put the 3 aims, clear 3 or 4 aims, 3 aims in one slide, and show what your study design is. And then having a few more figures, relevant figures, tables of preliminary data. And I say always try to include a table of the measurements rather than describing 4 pages of all the different measurements you're doing. If you had one table that clearly shows what are the measures collected by questionnaire, collected by examination, collected in the lab, collected in imaging, how often are you going to do it, what's the frequency, what's the method, how standardized is it? If you summarize all of that in a table, it makes life of the reviewer very easy, and it makes your life very easy. So yes, tables, figures are very important. How do reviewers deal with grant writers who took a break from academia and may not have a typical publication record? Here it varies a lot. In honesty, we want a world where people can be fair to such people who have taken a break. But in reality, you have to look at the reality, it may not happen. So your best bet is A, put out your best. And if you really have taken a break in your statement, come out with it. Make it very clear. Say, I had a tremendous track record, but I had to take a break. And now I've come back after whatever it is. And so this is my chance to do well. And to help me do well, I have 2 colleagues who have maintained their academic track record. So you want to play the game well. Do these recommendations also apply to letter of intent or to the full proposal? The letter of intent in general is not very influential. The reason you do a letter of intent is largely to help the NIH study, decide how to organize the study section, how many people to invite into as reviewers, etc. But making your letter of intent clear is important. I mean, it's a one-page short document where you basically say, this is my team, these are the PIs, co-PIs, the leading ones, this is my team, and you just provide them a flavor of things. Sometimes like the Wellcome Trust, for example, they ask you for a letter of intent and make an initial judgment to invite or not to invite based on the letter of intent. There you should take things more seriously.
Any other questions from anyone?
Yeah, if you have a budget, there's one more. If you have a budget of say $20,000 to help prepare the grant, how would you spend it? Firstly, a budget of $20,000 to prepare a grant is unusual. That's a lot of money. That's one thing I would like to say. Secondly, the way you'd want to spend it, ideally, I would spend such money on two things. I would spend it initially on investing that money in collecting some pilot data to strengthen the grant's chance of getting published. So if you want to do a study and there are, you want to show the feasibility that you can do the study, use it as a small pilot, also use the data from the pilot to help you plan the power, the analysis, etc. That becomes important. Second, use it to support your writing, either through recruiting a fellow or etc. What you don't want to do is spend a lot of money and meetings and things like that. And while I'm saying that, the other thing that people pay a lot of attention to is three things simultaneously. The aims of your project, what are the specific aims and hypotheses? And for each aim, how have you handled the analysis? And for each analysis, what is the power? Those three things are linked. And often you want to write them simultaneously because when you start, we all think very ambitiously, but then the money is limited, the time is limited. So you want to adjust your aims, your analysis and power appropriately. And the other thing that reason why a lot of proposals bomb is because it's too ambitious or your timelines are unrealistic. So pay attention to it. And this is why bringing in senior mentors early, talking to them about it is very important. Some partnership have the possibility of many included individuals. How can this be adequately summarized with page limits? This is quite simple. Basically, you're providing a CV for every individual. So what is in the CV, you don't have to repeat in your proposal. You also have a budget justification where you have a chance of writing why you're including various people. And then in your proposal itself, in the approach section, I would keep it to a paragraph saying this multidisciplinary team or whatever the team is composes of the following people, led by the following person, composed to the following. These are the complementary strengths that you bring. So you want to write it in general and allow the reviewers to go to the individual CVs rather than repeating the CV of every individual in your proposal. That's a waste of time. And that conveys the impression that you don't have much to say. Is it possible to apply for more than one opportunity? Yes, I think so. In general, when you write something, there are multiple ideas attached to it. You're not allowed to submit the same proposal to another place when it's being reviewed. But if it gets rejected, you can definitely revise and resubmit it somewhere else. Or there might be aspects of a proposal which can be expanded into something else. All of this is allowed. But what you don't want to do is simultaneously submit the same proposal to two different places. That would not be legal. Regarding the U54, any advice on how to structure the overall and the administrative core? It's a long time since I've written a U54, but in general, you want to structure it. The administrative core, the important thing, number one, who are the leaders of the administrative core? These need to be people with a lot of experience and ability and respect to be able to bring a group together and make that group collaborate. And then you need to make sure that the leader has a successor. So suppose something goes wrong with the leader or 5 years later. So showing that succession planning is important. Then you want to keep it small, but you want to make sure you've included all relevant players. Suppose there are 3 different project areas, you want to bring them in. If there's a lab area, you want to bring them in. So that administrative core, and describe in some detail the background of these people working together, how you plan to have meetings, whether online or physical meetings, who will be the secretariat. So making sure you show that clearly, All of that becomes important. And how are you going to evaluate the administrative core is going to be important. So if there's a conflict, how will you resolve it? If there are two PIs and they don't disagree, how will you resolve it? Your timeline, how are you going to allocate different resources? What research base you have at your institution? What partnerships you have at your institutions? All of those are important in the administrative core. And how will the administrative core relate with the NIH, with the network, all of that. I just read the LOI is not required, not binding, and does not enter into the review. Is it encouraged to? I think so. I mean, although it is not required, I think it's helpful to submit it for the reason that you are being helpful to NIH, and also it forces you to very early start thinking about the AIMS page. So that's why I would do it. And the other thing I strongly encourage you to do is once you've formulated your idea broadly, not the specifics, make sure you reach out to the NIH project officer and have a half-an-hour call and get some advice. They can't advise you specifics, but they can give you broad thoughts and strategies of ways to improve your proposal. And very importantly, getting to know your project officer is very important, because suppose after you got your score, you fall in three categories. There are some scores which are so good, 1 and 2s and 1, 10 and 20s, which are very strong to get funded. There are scores that are like 40, 50, 60 that rarely get funded. But then there are scores in the middle, 25 to 40 or 25 to whatever, where there is some chance. And that is the stage at which the project officers can be very helpful. They can even give you a chance and say, can you respond to the reviewers and give it to me? Let's see if the council might be interested. Or if not, come back with a resubmission. So that is very important.
I think this is a good time to wrap up. We'll be joining the plenary in about 5 minutes' time. I just wanted to thank you so much, Venkat, for that was really detailed and a rapid fire. And thank you to all the participants for excellent questions. I want to remind you that this recording will be available and shared with participants and be made on a public YouTube channel that is linked to this as well. And this chat will be saved as well, and some of these questions will be conveyed to the rest of the team as well.
Yeah, and thank you very much. Yeah, I'll send
yes.
I'll send you that link for the anatomy of an AIMS page.
Yes,
I think understanding that you want to write the AIMS page well and write the rest of the proposal just following it. The AIMS page is a summary of your proposal. So once you master that art, you're a good writer.
And just to remind you, there is also a DSIA glossary and resources page on the KI Storm, where there's some YouTube links, videos right at the bottom on some tips from the NIH as well. So thank you, Venkat, we'll add that as well to those.
Okay, bye-bye, bye-bye.
Great. Just to, as we leave this session, I would like to invite you now to return to the plenary. The way to do this is you will have to exit this Zoom room, and I'll paste the instructions over here. You will have to exit the Zoom room over here and log in through your KI link over there. So I've pasted the instructions in the chat now, and you may leave this by clicking the End button in the bottom right and join the plenary session straight from the KI page. You have to go back to the KI page to join the plenary. Thank you all for participating, and we'll see you soon in the plenary, hopefully.